will get started with tonight's meeting. Welcome to the council meeting of June 7th, 2012. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and David Leitner is going to actually lead us in that tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Tonight you have two roll calls. Your first roll call is for City Council. Councilmember Gold. Here. Councilmember Bossy.
Here.
Councilmember Brucker.
Here.
Vice Mayor Mirisch.
Here.
Mayor Bryan.
Here.
And your second roll call is as the Parking Authority. Director Gold.
Here.
Director Bossy.
Here.
Director Brucker.
Here.
Director Mirisch.
Here.
Chair Bryan.
Here. Okay, we're going to go on to presentations, and we're going to recognize one of our retiring commissioners tonight, Mr. Ira Friedman, and I'm going to ask him to come up to the podium there, and I'm going to ask Dr. Gold to join. So, Ira, it's really bittersweet when we have to say thank you for all of your service because that means we're losing your service on this wonderful commission. You served fantastically with the Traffic and Parking Commission. I had the opportunity to work with you as a council member and mayor, and I want to thank you for your years of service, including being the chairperson in 2010 and 2011. I also wanted to invite Dr. Gold here because I believe you and he worked closely together over the course of time. I'm going to actually hand you this wonderful, not you, you're going to hold it. He's always trying to take you. I'm surprised he didn't grab the gift. I don't know
what's in it.
So I'm going to give you this plaque thanking you for your years of service. I'm going to hold on to the gifts so that he doesn't take it. I'll give it to you at the end. But Julian, maybe you want to say a few words.
So, Ira, I too want to add my congratulations. It is bittersweet. You did a great job. 6 years goes very, very quickly. And for one who actually served with you, I have to say to everybody, you were a pleasure to serve with, and you always were thoughtful. You always had great ideas, and you really, really did help the commission do stuff that it had to do. So congratulations, and we do appreciate it. Thank you.
I wanted to just say that the 6 years, a lot of people said, well, but you're glad it's over. No, actually not. I enjoyed every minute of it. I enjoyed working with all of my fellow commissioners, the staff, which is back here, Aaron and Dave, and Chad, and all the other people that we worked with. It was great. And the biggest thing, I think, accomplishment is I wasn't indicted, so. Thank you very much, and it was my pleasure to donate my time to the city. We've lived here, my wife over here, and I and our family have lived here since 1980. Our kids went to school here, and the city has been great for us, and except for 1 year when I was hallucinating and had an office in West L.A., my office has been in Beverly Hills since 1976. And I probably will be here till they carry me away, and then I'll stay a little later after that. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to give you the gift.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
right.
it. No gift is required, but I do appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Thank you for all your years
Thank you,
of
Willie.
service. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now go to oral communications on items not on the agenda. And we do have a telephone phone-in number, and that number is 310. What is that number?
It's 310-285-1020.
Oh, very well done. Anyone call in yet? Okay, so I have a couple of speakers who'd like to speak. I'm going to start with Jody Kleinman.
Good evening. I'm here tonight because I received a request from Pacific Coast Brightburn to support their efforts in applying for new permits from the City of Beverly Hills to drill 2 new wells under our city at their site on Pico and Doheny. It was a big postcard that I received in the mail that they wanted me to send back to them. They actually have asked me to sign, and I quote, "I believe it is safe and not noticeable within the city limits," end quote. I find these tactics offensive, to say the least, but not surprising. Here we are again 8 years later with the exact same request that a prior city council wisely rejected. It remains equally important that you make the same decision. This is not the time to approve any new oil drilling or even re-drilling under our city. You are in the precarious position of defending against the MTA using many of the same arguments that we made against our oil well and expanded drilling. You listened to our community, and our campus oil well will be permanently closed in 2016. We have said no more drilling from our city limits, and yet Brightburn wants you to reverse your previous permit decision about them. In essence, they are asking for your permission to expand their drilling just a few blocks from our city border, allowing our neighbors to experience what we have deemed inappropriate for us. That's at Pico and Doheny at their site. You have voted that is unsafe for our city, but could it then be possibly safe enough for our neighbors? That would truly make us NIMBYs, as many in the MTA fight already call us. We cannot afford this label. You need to uphold what our prior city council already enacted. It is perfectly within your rights to deny a permit. Royalties sometimes need to be sacrificed for the greater health, safety, and welfare of our Beverly Hills citizens and our neighbors. When I originally presented this notebook that I provided some more copies for you in 2004, I privately hired a well-respected environmental attorney that Larry knows, Jan Chatton Brown, and I urge you to review this evaluation that's in the notebook. It was clear that Brightburn was not following the rules then, and it appears to me that they want to do the same now. I also hired a private geologist, and he raised legitimate geological concerns. Much of what both consultants said is very relevant in your fight with MTA, specifically about the CEQA process and potential risks. In this notebook, I also included many relevant articles detailing the dangers of oil drilling and drilling in urban areas. Please do not have institutional amnesia when Brightburn comes back. Their arguments will be the same, their spin will be the same, but all the facts related to risk also remain the same. In fact, the science documenting risks is even stronger today than in 2004. We have come a long way to correct our own oil mistakes of the past. We have already been down the same road with Brightburn, and we prevailed then. Please preserve the intentions of our past city councils and once again reject Pacific Coast Brightburn. One more sentence. A name change does not change what we know to be true about industrial drilling in residential urban areas and the potential risks for all of us. I come to you tonight before they officially present their ideas to you. I urge you to reject Brightburn again. Recommit to what a prior city council enacted, have the courage to stay consistent, and leave our city's environmental legacy intact. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to have Justin Lanning come up, who wants to speak on violence and crime in Beverly Hills.
Hello, everyone.
3 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Justin Lanning, and I've been living in Beverly Hills for many years now. I shared my time at Hawthorne Elementary and Middle School and completed Beverly Hills High School early. I love living in Beverly Hills. It's a beautiful, beautiful city to live in. The police, the medical, and fire departments are all second to none and absolutely incredible. I have been active in charities and community projects within the city for many years. And unfortunately, now I am in fear of my life. I don't say this lightly. My mother, Nancy Lanning, is a breast cancer survivor. She's 63 years old. She's 5'1", and around 100 pounds, and I'm not exaggerating. My mother suffered a very serious concussion. She was really hurt. Thank God she doesn't remember being attacked while she was in bed in our own home, and then knocked unconscious and dragged into my hallway, where we were both forced to watch each other get terribly beat up at close point of facing what it seemed to be certain death. Most incidents occurred here in Beverly Hills. I have a chronological listing of the last 5 events, and I have 2 police reports here, which I'd love to give to whoever, just so you can verify what I'm saying is true. On January 30th was the most recent attack, which I'm speaking of in Beverly Hills, where and forgive any misunderstood information, but where 4 African American men entered my home on January 30th, and it says in the police report what happened. It's actually very hard for me to talk about, and I seek not to alienate the police department or jeopardize the case in any way, shape, or form. But on January 30th of this year, there was a very serious attack on my family. The previous one before that was October 26, 2011, where our home was pretty much burnt down, except for the amazing response of the fire department, thank God. There was a more recent event on May 10th, which I believe is all connected to everything, at my father's building, which is not located in Beverly Hills. There have been over 25 incidents to date, and I please just encourage the City Council to take a deeper look at this matter. This is a life-threatening situation. I do not feel safe at my home in Beverly Hills. Beverly Hills is known for being a safe city, and please, I just urge the council to take a deeper look into this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lanning. If you have documents that you would like us to see, you could give those to the city clerk. He will make sure that we get those documents.
And I did also go through the appropriate channels. I went to speak to the lieutenants, and then I tried to see the captain, and I don't know where else to turn. I feel like I need to speak to council. So
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Next, I'm going to call up Mr. Thomas White from the Municipal League to talk about an upcoming league meeting. Mr. White, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm Thomas White, Chairman of the Municipal League of Beverly Hills. I'm here to invite the council and our residential community and the public at large to our program on Thursday, June 14th, 2012 at 7 p.m., which is 1 week from tonight, called an update on Metro, where we're going, where we are and where we're going. This will be a town hall meeting, and it's sponsored by the Municipal League of Beverly Hills and the Beverly Hills PTA Council. And among our speakers are, and I won't list their titles because all of these names are well known to you, Brian David Goldberg, John Marish, Lisa Korbatoff, Lily Bossy, Dr. Gary Woods, Kevin Brogan, and Tim Baresh. And Mr. Brogan is the trial counsel for BHUSD in their opposition to the Metropolitan's decision on tunneling underneath Beverly Hills High School, and Mr. Baresh is the engineering expert for Beverly Hills Unified School District. So we're looking forward to a very informative session with these speakers and experts, and this is an extremely important matter, as we all know, and I believe our community is unified in this matter as it has ever been, certainly in my 35 years of living in Beverly Hills, and we welcome everyone to come and attend and participate in this event, and we'd be very pleased for all of the council to come and senior staff as well. So we look forward to seeing you on the 14th, 1 week from this evening.
Thank you, Mr. White. As you know, I responded to you already that
I thank you for that. Yeah, I did. I'm glad you reminded me. Mayor Bryan was invited by the league board to be a speaker, and unfortunately had to decline because of the Conference of U.S. Mayors, which he'll be attending next week. So we regret your inability to be with us, but we'll take you up on your your offer to appear at another meeting, and we thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. White, just maybe you want to just tell us and the community where the meeting is actually going to be held.
I beg your pardon. I went all the way through this and ignored one of the most important parts. It's at the Beverly Hills Women's Club, which is 1700 Chevy Chase Drive at Benedict Canyon Drive in Beverly Hills, and it's a lovely place, and we're going to have refreshments, and a good time is guaranteed for all. Thank you again. 7 p.m. That's it. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you. Okay, we'll go on next to the report from the city manager. Fire Prevention Bureau Services and Successes. Chris Hayer, the Deputy Fire Marshal. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'd like to share the next few minutes discussing the services and successes of our Fire Prevention Bureau. Our services include fire plan check. And this is fire plan check of various fire protection systems, including but not limited to fire sprinkler, fire alarm, and alternative fire extinguishing methods for both new construction and tenant improvements. These are all done by our own in-house fire plan check inspector. Our plan check inspector assists with annual state-mandated high-rise inspections, represents the fire department in the Development Services Program and in the Development Review Task Force. She also reviews modification requests requiring code interpretation and acts as a liaison between the fire department and building and safety during the process. She also assists engineers, architects, contractors via email, phone, and meetings involving code-related concerns. Field inspections are performed by our fire inspectors, which include but are not limited to fire sprinkler inspections, fire alarm inspections, commercial cooking extinguishing systems, and clean agent systems in both new construction, tenant improvement settings, and system alterations. Our fire inspectors also handle engine company inspection referrals of businesses, multifamily occupancies, or brush inspections due to the complex nature or just a mere fact that it is a result of a final notice of violation being issued. They also handle citizen complaints involving possible fire hazards or hazardous materials or conditions. Both inspectors share the responsibility for all state-mandated high-rise inspections and state-mandated school inspections on an annual basis. Lastly, our fire inspectors are also tasked with educating the public about fire safety and fire prevention. Some of our successes include we are extremely proud of our approximate 10-day turnaround on fire plan checks. This is exceptional considering the amount of plans we receive for review. In addition, our plan checker is available for over-the-counter plan checks to assist with expediting the customer's project. Additionally, our fire inspectors schedule their own inspections with designated times with the contractors in the field, thus providing flexibility and enhanced customer service. Our fire inspectors are also available for off-hours inspections, which prove to be extremely helpful to contractors, business owners, and tenants as construction deadlines near. I would like to close by saying I'm very proud to work in a fire prevention bureau that is staffed with such a fine group of dedicated, professional, and highly motivated employees that share a common goal of providing superior customer service and fire prevention services to the citizens, business owners, and visitors of the city of Beverly Hills. Thank you very much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Nicely presented. Next, we have preventing auto break-ins from our Police Sergeant Greg Mader. Welcome.
Thank you. See that work? Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, City Council. I'm Sergeant Greg Mader with the Police Department. I'm the Community Liaison Sergeant, and crime prevention is one of my responsibilities. And my reason for being here this evening is to address the theft from autos and burglaries from automobiles in our city. I have a brief PowerPoint here which summarizes the activity and some crime prevention and some crime prevention, things that we can do to reduce the chance of being a victim of this crime. This is a regional problem. It's all over Los Angeles County, Orange County, Ventura County, and the West Side in general. It's not exclusive to Beverly Hills. It has a wide-reaching significance. So far this year in Beverly Hills, we've had 152 of these crimes. To give you perspective, in the surrounding area of immediately surrounding Beverly Hills in Los Angeles, there's been in excess of 350 of these crimes. 78 of these crimes occurred in 2001, so the trend is definitely up. 84 of the 152 crimes that I mentioned were actually thefts from automobiles, which means that the cars were not locked. 68 of them were burglaries, which means that there was force used to enter the vehicle. If you break down the problem by area, north of Santa Monica versus south of Santa Monica, you'll see that we had 81% of the crimes north of Santa Monica were thefts. So there were vehicles that were left unlocked. Only 19% of them were burglaries, so force was used on those vehicles. In the south end of the city, the trend is almost opposite of that. 40% were thefts, so the vehicles were left unlocked, and 60% were burglaries, so force was used on the vehicles to get the property. Now, we have arrested 2 suspects within the past month, and we cleared 8 cases as a result of physical evidence, fingerprints, and 40 cases by MO. So their MO or their method of operation or modus operandi was quite clear, and we've attributed 40 additional cases to those 2 arrestees, which represents a 31.5% clearance rate. Suspect profile. Both suspects that we arrested were on early release. Assembly Bill 109, also known as the California Realignment Act, was implemented as a result of a Supreme Court decision which recognized overcrowding in the prisons in California. As a result, approximately 20,000 parolees will be released into the LA Basin area by the time it's fully implemented in 2014. Both of the suspects arrested were early release parolees. So it's a problem that's facing law enforcement throughout the area. The other type of criminal is an opportunist. And those are the folks that are going around and looking for unlocked cars with property that's clearly displayed that's valuable. Now, crime prevention. Some of this is not rocket science. It's pretty obvious. Vehicles need to be left locked. Property that's valuable should not be left in sight. If someone is coming home and they're transferring property to their trunk, it should be done out of sight because some of these folks are in the area and they're watching people's habits. Another issue that we have is folks that are fortunate enough to have security gates in front of their property are more likely to leave their cars unlocked because they believe they're behind security gates, and that is a deterrent for criminals. It's actually more of, they can be targeted more because of the gates, because the criminals know that those cars are more likely to be unlocked. So gates are not something that's going to prevent this crime. The other thing that we're encouraging everybody nowadays in the neighborhood watch meetings and the home inspections that I do is to look into the possibility of adding cameras to their properties. Cameras are inexpensive nowadays. They've got infrared capability. They've got internet monitoring capability. You can monitor your cameras from your smartphone. So if an alarm goes off or a camera goes off, you'll get an alert and you can contact us immediately and we'll respond and hopefully catch the bad guys in the act. The other thing we talk about are the principles of CPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. And that is you're less likely to be a victim of a crime if the property is well lit, landscaping is trimmed and doesn't afford concealment opportunity for the criminals, and again, natural surveillance, which is basically everybody looking out for each other, neighbors knowing the habits and trends of their neighbors. So if they see something suspicious, they will call the police immediately. We also encourage anybody who sees suspicious activity to contact us immediately. They can call 911 or they can call our non-emergency number, which is there, 310-550-4951. Sometimes I get the question, we weren't sure if we should call the police or not. I like to tell folks that if you think you should call us, please give us a call. because it's always fine for us to go out there and find out that we're not needed, as opposed to going out there after the fact and finding out that we were needed and that we may have been able to deter a crime or catch a criminal if we'd been notified sooner. One other side note is on June 6th, one of our officers, Officer Kevin Berger, was actually having his breakfast at one of the local restaurants when he observed two burglars who came in to have breakfast that he had seen on some surveillance video. He brought in other officers, and they detained these folks and confirmed them to be the burglars of two of our 459 to residences, and one in West Hollywood. So that was an excellent arrest, and we give him kudos for that. Questions for me?
Any questions or comments? So I want to thank you. I actually think that this is important. I know you did a neighborhood watch program up in Truesdale. They had some concerns, and the Truesdale people are pleased that there's seems to be some improved or increase in terms of just police cars and availability around Truesdale, so I thank you for that. And I do think that this is important because this is something in general. Locking your car door is simple. I actually had someone break into my car not too long ago because the one time, and I mean one time, I didn't lock my door. They went into my car. The only good news is that the only thing they took was a pair of prescription sunglasses. They will never be able to see out of those things. But it's just so simple, and it really was the one time I realized in the morning I had forgot to lock my car door the night before. So, yeah, it's my house. It was at my house. Yeah. So, I thank you very much, and I think that just public awareness about simple things can make a big difference. And you guys being around and on the streets is obviously the greatest deterrent. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we will go on to item D1. City Clerk.
This is the time and place set for a public hearing to consider resolutions entitled Resolution of the Council of the City of Beverly Hills adopting the annual appropriations limit for the fiscal year 2012-2013, and Resolution of the Council of the City of Beverly Hills approving the operating budget and financial policies for the 2012-2013 fiscal year and appropriating funds therefore, and Resolution of the Council of the City of Beverly Hills approving the capital improvement program budget for the 2012-2013 fiscal year and appropriating funds therefore. Let the record show that the notice of this hearing was published as required by law. The records and files of the Administrative Services Department and the report of the Director of Administrative Services, Chief Financial Officer concerning this matter shall be entered into the record.
Fantastic. Thank you. We will have an oral report on this matter from the Budget Manager, Don Harrison.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm Don Harrison, the city's Budget and Revenue Officer. The item before you tonight is a consideration and adoption of the city's annual budget for fiscal year 2012-13, including the adoption of the appropriations limit, the operating budget and financial policies, and the capital improvement budget. Let me provide a brief overview and recap the budget process, the proposed budget, and an alternative proposal that staff has developed for your consideration. As you know, the budget process began in November with the dissemination of budget materials to each department for their completion of their fiscal year 2012-13 requests and descriptions of their ongoing tasks and their work plan items for the coming year. These were compiled and personnel costs were calculated and distributed to appropriate programs. Next, the city manager met with each department to review their budgets and work plans for the coming year. This information, along with revenue projections, allowed for review of all enhancement requests and decisions to be made on each. Upon completion of this review, the proposed budget was developed and provided to the City Council for its review. Based on the estimated expenditure needs and conservative revenue estimates, there was a gap of about $5.15 million in the initial budget. We utilized several one-time measures to close this gap prior to completing and presenting the proposed budget. As was previously presented to you, the proposed budget includes transfers to the Parking Authority and the Clean Water or Stormwater Fund totaling $6.3 million. Without these transfers, the proposed budget would have decreased by $48,000 or 0.03%. Basically, it would have been flat compared to the projected year-end 2011-12 expenditures. As such, these transfers and the structural imbalance that exists in the Parking Authority and the Clean Water Stormwater Fund were the predominant cost drivers for this budget. Concerning cost containment, the city has taken significant steps in recent years to reduce current and ongoing expenditures, as well as long-term liabilities, both funded and unfunded. Examples of this include the recently approved MOU or contract with the city's Police Officers Association, which provides for no increases in salaries over the first 2 years of the contract and establishes a new lower tier of retirement benefit for employees hired after July 1 of this year. Similar terms are expected in the final MOU or contract with the firefighters and in the next round of contract negotiations with miscellaneous employee associations. The city's development of the Alternative Retiree Medical Program, or ARMP as we call it, and the Defined Contribution Retiree Medical Plan for employees hired after July 1, 2010, have significantly reduced the city's unfunded liability, as well as the total future costs for this benefit. In addition, through the budget process in recent years, the city has made budget cuts of $37 million and eliminated a net of 91 full-time equivalent positions in this time. These actions have significantly reduced the projected future gap between revenues and expenditures, but have not eliminated that gap. To be clear, this is a gap in projected future years based on certain assumptions for future growth. The city has not experienced an actual budgetary gap or adopted a budget which has higher expenditures than revenues. At 4 budget study sessions held in May, the City Council received public input on the budget, reviewed the proposed operating and capital improvement budgets, and heard recommendations from the City Treasurer's Citizens Budget Review Committee. Throughout the sessions, the City Council provided input and direction to staff on its concerns with the budget. The consensus message that the staff drew from these meetings was that the City Council does not wish to rely on future one-time measures to balance the budget, and that the City Council would like to make structural changes that will bend, if you will, the curves of revenue and expenditures so that realistic forecasts will provide an expectation of revenues that will exceed expenditures. Further, the City Council would like to phase in incremental changes to achieve this in an orderly manner without significant disruption to current services. As previously addressed, many structural changes have already been made, some of which the impact has not yet been realized and which provide a narrower gap even utilizing conservative revenue estimates. To address the concerns raised by the City Council at the study sessions, staff has prepared a multi-year approach to structurally change the city's fiscal trajectory. Using this approach, the city would phase out the use of one-time measures to balance the budget. Staff will continue to monitor revenues and conditions that might impact future expenditure increases, such as changes in actuarial calculations for retirement benefits, increases in health insurance costs, and state or federal mandates. This approach will also require significant fiscal discipline, such as implementing new programs only after determining offsets of revenue or expenditure reduction to cover the added costs. This approach will provide for a sustainable surplus for the general fund. The approach will rely on both revenue growth and budget reductions. As included in the agenda report, this approach includes the reduction of $899,100 in fiscal year 2012-13 general fund budget. The alternative proposed budget includes general fund appropriations of $172.6 million, leaving a budget surplus of $902,700. The total operating budget for all funds under this scenario would be $373.8 million. Additionally, in the agenda report, we reported that the $200,000 needed to modify the room 280A to provide for the ability to cablecast commission meetings from that room was not included in the proposed capital improvement budget and would need to be added. As there seemed to be a consensus to add this, the capital improvement budget resolution should be amended to provide for $41,216,500 in appropriations. With this brief presentation, the budget is ready for adoption. Adopting the alternative approach which we presented would amend the total appropriations in the resolution before you to $373,774,600. And we're pleased to address any questions or concerns which the council may have.
Great, thank you very much. Is there anyone in the council chambers wishing to be heard on this subject? Hearing none, the communication from members of the community will be closed. We will go to any questions from members of the council. Dr. Gold? Questions? Ms. Bossi?
Thank you, Mayor. At our last meeting, Mayor Bryan asked to trim this particular budget further. I'm just curious if there was anything done in that regard.
$900,000.
But specifically, what are we trimming?
In the staff report, in the agenda report, we identified the where the cuts would take place in the general fund, and I can run through that. The almost $900,000 would be spread among virtually all departments. $109,000 of that coming from policy and management, $38,000 from the city attorney, $112,000 from administrative services, $146,000 from police, $100,000 from fire, $102,000 from information technology, $250,000 from public works, and $40,000 from community services.
Yeah, I know. I read the report, but is there anything specific line item other than just the numbers? I didn't see that in the report. Do we have that?
Yes, let me. All right, so if you want to run through them line by line, is that your desire? Yeah,
Yes, it is.
So
Thank you.
$40,000 would come from communications and marketing, and this would have limited impact. Reduction of resources available for the production and circulation of the newsletter. There would be $31,000 reduced in a reduction in the public relation consulting and federal lobbyist contractual services. And the department would give up its PARS offset. If you'll recall, there was an offset provided to departments who had people retiring into the PARS program a year ago. In the city attorney's office, there would be a $30,000 reduction in monies set aside to handle code enforcement, and there would be an $8,000 reduction in litigation and special services.
Can you go back to that last slide? When it says may limit the city's aggressiveness in pursuing certain quality of life issues, what does that mean by may limit the city's aggressiveness? Is this definitely $30,000 realized, or is this potential? Because when it says may, to me, that doesn't mean definitive.
So the may does not refer to the amount that would be cut in the budget, but to the prospect of whether or not we will be faced with the need for this amount of code enforcement services. In the city attorney's budget, both in code prosecutions and in terms of anticipating what we will need to defend against litigation, we are doing a fair amount of prognostication about what will happen in the coming year. And we have some history on which to base our educated guesses, but in any one year, we don't know how many people will end up violating the municipal code and require prosecution or will not. By cutting the budget for code enforcement, I am confident, based on past history, that we will still have a more than sufficient amount of money to address any health and safety issues that may arise and that we may need to prosecute. What could happen, and thus use of the word may, is that when it comes down to quality of life issues, that we may bump up against our budget and we may be slightly less aggressive on quality of life issues if we're forced to cut back the budget in that area.
Okay. So to me, first of all, in that regard, isn't that more of a policy decision as to whether or not you want to cut back on quality of life issues in terms of litigation? And that to me is the first question. And then secondly, in looking at these two budget items, how do you differentiate between being conservative in projecting a budget and and then now going back to the budget and taking away the fact that maybe we were conservative and just kind of skimming back the conservativeness?
So certainly it is within my ability in terms of projecting expenses to say, well, I will simply project that we will have less litigation, fewer lawsuits filed against the city, and I could, on paper, save money that way. My view has always been, and I've talked about this a little bit in past budget presentations, when we've had to cut, in years where we've had larger cuts from the city attorney's budget and painful cuts, that, to me, would be somewhat cheating the paradigm. Because at the end of the day, if I do that and I'm wrong, I'm coming back to you and saying, toward the end of the fiscal year, well, we received this lawsuit and that lawsuit and the other lawsuit, and therefore, we need extra money or we've got to settle these lawsuits.
And I guess my point is, in looking at these reductions, I'm interested in actual cost savings as opposed to cost projections. For example, let me just finish. When we talk about the 91 jobs, those are not jobs that we let go. Many of those were just jobs that we didn't fill. So I think it's about perspective. So to me, if we were conservative in a particular budget item, and now when we're going back to look at it, saying, okay, well, we probably were too conservative, so let's bring down that number. That's what I'm trying to understand.
And I'm not saying that if I simply said, well, I was conservative, so now I'm bringing down a number and there won't be any impact, I think that would be what I was referring to earlier, cheating the paradigm. The vast majority of the city attorney's budget generally may be a little bit different than other departments in that our budget, for the most part, is reactive to what lawsuits we need to bring and what lawsuits are filed against us. There aren't a lot of areas in which I have sole control over what we spend. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm asked to cut money from our budget, I try and focus on those areas where I have some control over those expenditures as opposed to reacting to the actions of third parties. And that's why you see the options that are here, so that I could represent to you that I can achieve these savings rather than these are just my hope that someone else doesn't force these costs upon us.
Okay. So I guess my next question then, and I do want to go through this, excuse me, is for you. In terms of these budget reductions, are these actual cost savings that we were going to spend, or is this, as I was saying earlier, where you're conservative in your estimate and now we're able to look at it and see that we're a bit more realistic, or for lack of a better word, that we can do it for less?
Yeah, I think you'll see as we go through them that they all represent actual cuts, and there will be impacts on service. You know, small, modest, but there will still be some things that won't be done as a result of the cuts being made. For example, you know, the access to the federal lobbyist or the public relations consultants, those won't be available.
Okay. Well, then I think it is really important that we go through this line by line, because this is, in my mind, a policy decision, and we'll see if the council feels that it is something that is important to keep or not. So if you don't mind to continue.
All right. That's right. Okay, so in administrative services, we're proposing to cut $18,000 from the use of a bond disclosure agent. We'll do that work in-house. That will have nominal impact. We actually found the consultant to be somewhat less efficient, so it would have a nominal impact on the staff. We propose to cut $15,000 to reduce the facilitator for executive retreats. This will result in some modest impact on the efficacy of the retreats. Cutting $40,000 in employee computer training programs. We utilize a consultant to provide just a whole range of PC training for city employees. $30,000 in reducing leadership development and succession planning services. The departments would assume a greater role in that on their own, and more would be handled by existing human resources staff. And cut of $9,700 in software, license fees and consulting. And this was originally for our Limehouse program. We don't use that anymore. We were able to use those funds to help with Cognos report writing, and that would reduce the ability to utilize that. In the police department, we propose to leave a police officer position unfunded for 2 fiscal years. Now, that may not have an actual impact in that the time that it takes to fill those positions and the vacancies that we have right now, it's probably not likely that that position would be filled. Certainly not in the next fiscal year, but possibly in the.
Well, since this is obviously a really important line item. We're talking about a police officer. Was this particular item in the budget before?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm hoping and assuming that the chief agreed to this?
Yes.
Okay, continue.
Okay, the next one is reducing overtime in the fire department by $100,000, and this is something that is related to the fire department's establishment of a safety battalion chief, and so those funds are being cut for that. And just looking at the current budget and the amount of overtime available this time of year, it looks like that the impact of that might not be tremendous. In information technology, we eliminate the position, one of the system integrator positions that are being proposed, and this would be a savings of $102,000. Moving on to public works, they would propose to reduce overtime for parking enforcement by $20,000, and this would likely impact the disabled placard enforcement program. They would propose to reduce their contract for parking operations, for contracted parking operations, by $100,000. In the short term, that would have a very little impact. In the long term, it may likely result in a need to come back to revisit that if.
And this, it does say here that it assumes that the position for the parking service manager that was being proposed will be filled.
That's correct.
Okay.
They also proposed to reduce their contract for parking citation administration services by $40,000. And again, this would have nominal short-term impacts. It would appear to have nominal long-term impacts in that if there is an increase in costs in the future, there would be offsetting revenue. We would just have to come back to council for enhanced appropriation, but it would be offset by revenue. Finally, they would propose to reduce the janitorial contract by $90,000. And this would likely have certain impacts in less frequency of certain janitorial tasks. In addition, they do point out that this, while they're seeing an increase in square footage that they're maintaining, to pull back, it kind of exacerbates the situation. But this can be done without, we would still have cleaning, it just wouldn't be as frequent.
Well, how does that affect the quality of service? And when you say it's not as frequent, what does that mean? I mean, will we still maintain the level of cleanliness, for lack of better words, or is it going to affect?
Yeah, I believe it would. I'll let Fred address that.
The effect would be less service in areas that are staff, where the staff has office and stuff. Our window cleaning would probably be reduced to once a year rather than twice. And special cleaning projects would probably be prioritized and not as often. We would still maintain the basic janitorial service. And in our lease facilities, we would maintain those to the level that we've contracted to.
Thank you.
Finally, in community services, they would reverse the reclass from part-time to full-time that is proposed in the current budget of a library clerk, and this would result in a lower level of supervision during evening hours, and would likely have some impacts on the illiteracy program.
Okay.
And there's your total, just under $900,000 in reductions.
And it would have impact on the literacy program? What did you say?
Yes.
Okay. So, having gone through it, the two items that I had mentioned at the last meeting, which was the water billing customer service manager at $163,900 is still in the budget, correct?
Yes, it is.
And the parking service manager full-time at $94,100, also still in the budget?
That's
okay.
correct.
So the other question I have for you is, in the resolution for the budget, it says the city manager transfers $300,000, CFO $100,000, and then at the end there would be a detailed report in the annual report. And I guess my question is, how long has this been in effect, this procedure?
This clause in the budget resolution?
Yeah.
It precedes my time here. I believe it's been here for some time.
Anybody want to speak to that? Yes? I just want to know if it's something that's
was here
been...
prior to my...
so it's been something that's been in the budget resolutions for, okay. Being that this is my second year, I didn't know.
How long have you been here, Don?
2.5 years.
Okay. On the transfer out of $6,300,000 to Fund 81 for parking-related projects, the prior budget, let me get to it. The prior budget had less, and now it has more. So, for example, in the prior budget, it was $33,493,000, and now it's $31,491,000. And I guess my question is, why would it be less if we're transferring money in? It seems to me like it would be more.
I didn't follow that question.
Well, in the budget, you've transferred out $6,300,000 to Fund 81 for parking-related projects. So far, are you following me?
Okay.
Okay. And then the prior budget, before we did this transfer, because the transfer came after our last meeting, the prior budget had less in that account, and now it has more. So I'm trying to understand, if you're transferring money out, to me, it seems like you would have less money as opposed to more money in a fund. Just counterintuitive to me, it didn't make sense.
So we're now talking about the capital improvement program budget?
I'm talking about the operating and capital budgets, and I'm referring to Budget 81. For example, right now, Fund 81 has $2,076,000 more than the previous budget document. So my question is, if we're transferring the money, shouldn't it be $6,300,000 more?
I'm sorry, Councilmember, do you have a page that you're
I am.
looking
I'm
at?
on page, I don't know where. 9, I guess. No, one that has all of our budget. It goes right after 8, but there isn't a number on it because it's not 9. It's. You don't have that page? Why do I have that page? Where do you have it? Oh, really? Okay. Yes, thank you. Page 3.
And which line item are you?
Well, I'm talking about the parking operations fund.
Oh, 81.
Yes, the one that we were talking about. Because that's the fund where we transferred out $6,300,000 to Fund 81 for parking-related projects. And so the prior budget had less money, and now it has more, but when you're transferring out, to me, it just seems, do you understand what I'm trying to say?
So let me make sure my understanding is correct. We're transferring the $6 million from the general fund.
Are you taking it from 8, the capital assets fund? Because I have 6.3.
No, we're talking about the operating portion of Fund 81.
Right.
It would come from the general fund,
Right.
01 fund.
So number 1?
So in the general fund, you would have an increase in their operating budget of the amount of the transfers. You're not going to see an increase in the operations for the parking enterprise. That comes in on the revenue side to cover the cost of those operating expenses.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
And I guess, now some of this is actually mute because you have since reduced the budget. So, but I was comparing the budget document from our last meeting to the budget document that we had prior to today's meeting. So that's where the numbers weren't driving. But now that we're actually doing something different, I'm not sure actually that matters as much. And then in terms of the CIP resolution, it had the same 300,000. So that's also something that has been there all this time as well?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And in terms of my perspective, you mentioned that you did not have in the current resolution the request to transfer the 200,000 from Fund 42, correct? So that would be something as an addition if the council wanted to do that.
Right.
Okay.
We're asking for that direction.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Brucker? Vice Mayor?
So with the reductions, what is the final total of the increase in headcount?
Let's see.
Because I see a couple of positions have been eliminated, but
Give me 1 second.
about 9?
Pardon me?
Is it 9 or so?
Take a moment and get it right.
Yeah. 6.
So before, what was it before? It was 7 before, and now it's, yeah, I thought it was 11, wasn't it?
Let's see.
So we're cutting out now 5 full-time employees? Doesn't look right from what you've shown there.
I think some are full-time to part-time, so you're not losing a...
Full-time equivalent.
Okay. What was the total? I see that one before was going to be part-time,
Yeah.
full-time.
There's some reclassifications, and I think you're probably counting those.
So what the total? That's why I'm asking. What was the total before, and what is it now?
Well, it was there's one position eliminated from that, so it would have been 7 before.
So it was definitely 7.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, for one of the ways that you're trying to save money, you talk about. Can you go back to where it was janitorial? I think. Yeah, there at the bottom. You talk about negotiate a lower level of service. Can I ask, why wouldn't you instead try and just negotiate a better deal rather than a lower level of service?
For the last couple of years with the previous budget cuts, our facility manager, Terry Wagner, has negotiated a better deal in the sense that we've gotten more bang for the buck. And they're running pretty lean right now, and our janitorial service, Able, has been very cooperative in trying to find these places where they can do more with less. And even that $90,000 is going to hurt, but we can figure out a way to do it, including some of the tasks will be done by our actual staff. So we will figure out a way to do it, and Able will work with us, and we'll negotiate basically more work with a little less money.
What percentage of the overall deal with them does the $90,000 represent?
It represents roughly probably about 3.5% or so.
3.5%. So their deal is millions.
Yeah, it's over $1 million.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Comments, Dr. Gold?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate staff's really hard work to put this book together, this budget together. I especially appreciate the fact that after our review of all of it, you went back, you found another almost $900,000 to take out of the budget, and I think took to heart the notion that we need to maintain a reasonable margin between our revenues and our expenses. So as a direction for this city, I think that that's very healthy, and I really do appreciate your doing that. I think that the work on the parking authority is our greatest challenge, and I'm convinced that we've not finished that. We still have a lot to do with that. Hopefully, if we can fix that, then some of the rest of this stuff can come back, and that needs to be a priority for our next year. In terms of how you've managed the personnel and things like that, I really do believe that that's yours to do, and as long as it stays within budget, I'm okay with it. I'm also okay with the appropriation of an additional $200,000 to upgrade the audiovisual in 288. So all in, I'm comfortable with the budget. I think it's been a lot of hard work, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bossi.
Thank you. Well, at least for me, I would have preferred to have seen this before tonight, to have had time to digest it and see, you know, what we think is a priority or not think is a priority. I still am of the opinion that some of this was a bit inflated on a conservative level, but from my perspective, eliminating safety personnel that was initially part of the budget last week and now this week isn't, I'm not comfortable with. In general, I agree that it's not our job to micromanage specifically staff in terms of who the staff is, but I do believe, from my perspective, it is our job given the direction that we are asking of our public safety and asking of our staff in terms of hiring new staff for positions that I feel can be done now, and creating, once again, new pension problems, and that is just, from my perspective, kind of kicking the can down the road. So, as I said at the last meeting, I couldn't support those positions. They're annual, and I can't support them. In terms of the CIP, as I do support the transfer of $200,000 to fund the upgrade in 280A. I think that's a wonderful use of the money in terms of priorities. I do not, as I've said earlier, support the potential of what is budgeted as potentially up to $10 million for the Public Works storage facility. So based on that, I'm unable to vote on the budget or on the CIP. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brucker.
Okay. All right. I do have a question, because maybe there's something that I'm missing here. To Councilmember Bossy, not on the CIP, because I understood that one. On the general fund, the two positions that you're talking about, shy of those two positions, which amount to what, $200,000, would you then have been prepared to vote for the general fund budget?
Tonight? I mean, because today, I mean, no, because tonight we were just given, I mean, we were told in the packet that there was going to be some reductions, but it wasn't itemized.
Right.
And for me to receive it currently at this moment and find out that a police officer is cut, or find out that potentially level of service, of janitorial service, find out now, I wouldn't have been able to support it anyway. So there's two issues. One, in theory, I mean, for example, one of the items that we talked about was hiring a customer service to help with kind of like a concierge to help, speed along the permit process and all of that. And I think that is something that is a new position, and something that we unanimously, along with the community feedback, felt that that's something we should approve, and I have no issue with that. I also think that will pay back in the long run by doing that. This particular water service manager, that position came into being because of some residents' complaints with the initial way they were treated. And to me, the answer is not to hire someone new. The answer to me is to make sure that they're treated correctly. So I'm not saying that I'm not in favor of hiring someone new if it's something that I feel is in the direction of what I think our community and our businesses and our council wants. But in these two positions, no. And aside from that, even if they were taken off the table for a separate vote, given that we were just given these potential cuts now, I wouldn't be able to support it because I'm just seeing it for the first time. And had I not even asked to see it line by line, we wouldn't have even seen it. So for me, I just, as you know, I'm so detail-oriented. So I can't ever support something if I'm just looking at it for the first time.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Firstly, I want to thank you, Dawn, and the entire staff. I think you have done a Herculean job in being fiscally responsible, and really the accountability of looking out for the financial interest of this city. I think you've taken it so you and the team have taken it so seriously, and this community, I think, should be grateful for that. The reduction in the FTEs is a step in the right direction if we can deliver, excellent services with fewer FTEs. Councilmember Bossy, and I agree with her, I agree that, our job is not to micromanage, how you hire. That is something that we leave to the city manager. That's his job. to deploy the employees according to how best to spend our budget dollars. And I also do agree with the expenditure for the Room 280 audiovisual opportunity. And again, I applaud the nearly $900,000 savings there. So I think we are on the right track. I do think that, we've got a multi-$100 million budget, and I know every one of us probably has some line item that we may not be happy with, but in the big picture, I think it's incumbent upon us to factor all of that in and say, with a $200 million, $170 million general fund, with the relatively small dollars that we may not agree with, is it still worth sending the message to the community that, we're supportive of the funding and the budget I think is appropriate. So I'm prepared to support the budgets, including the CIP.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, and I'd like to thank Dawn, you, Scott Miller, the entire staff for all of your hard work. It's not always easy putting together a budget, and it happens that there is obviously an institutionalized way of doing things that is sometimes very difficult to break loose from, and I understand that's the case here. The way I look at this is for the past couple of years we have made some progress in moving into the right direction. There are really major systemic changes that need to be made, and I've used that word many times, systemic changes, and I know Scott has as well. And I think we sort of, by necessity being the mother of virtue, over the past couple of years have started making some changes, although, again, slowly. I mean, it really, for me, a little bit feels like rather than, and I understand if we want to do it in a deliberate and gradual fashion, but a little bit it had the feeling of nibbling around the edges. I'm really glad and thankful that you were able to go and eliminate an additional $900,000 after what the mayor had mentioned last time, but in the context of a $378 million budget, it's still a relatively modest amount. And from my way of looking at things, it simply, it doesn't take us to where we need to go. I think some of the suggested reductions are good. It makes sense, and those are the sorts of things we should be looking at, reducing overtime, for example. But some of them are simply saying, well, we're going to reduce services. And that's always been sort of the dichotomy. Well, you've either got to pay more or reduce services. There's always the third or the fourth way, which is no, let's get better value for money. Let's take what we have and make it go further. And I think that's the most difficult way, but that's the one I think that we should be relentlessly pursuing. And I still think there's a lot more value for that considerable money that we can and we should be getting. And I have a slightly different perspective when it comes to OPEX and headcount. I mean, I think those are very basic budgetary functions, which are policy decisions. And while I agree that we're not going to maybe specify what each person among the 900 employees does, I think the idea of saying, you know what, there is a limit on headcount. We're not going to increase headcount. That's a policy decision. That's very basic sort of managerial stuff that we should be looking at. I think that this is the wrong time to be increasing headcount. I know, Barry, you mentioned we're reducing it. We're actually increasing it this year. And I know it's only a few, but again, I think that that's the wrong direction from the direction that we need to be going in. And I think if we want to have certain functions like a concierge, which I think we all agree would be a good idea and would provide services for businesses and for residents, then that means then we need to take that from somewhere else, and that's what we should be doing. In all of this as well, while we're increasing head count, and I've made no secret of it, what kind of rankles me is that we're still in a way sticking it to the residents, and we have it on on the consent calendar tonight, the second reading to let's increase water rates another 14% over the next 2 years. And so, as said, I have great difficulty with that in mind, supporting a budget which I feel does not go far enough in making the kind of systemic changes that we can and need to be making. I'm not saying we take an axe and we do it all in 1 year, but I don't see that it has gone far enough, or we are where we should be. But I do appreciate all of the good work that you and everyone else on the team has done. I'd like to thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think that we've heard over the last several meetings that there's a structural imbalance in our budget, that structural imbalances require structural changes. Those imbalances are significant, particularly to our parking fund and some of our other enterprise funds. And I also believe you can't get there in 1 year, and we can't do it this year. In fact, it's hard to get there in 4 years. We've cut $37 million out over the prior years because we had to, because there was no revenue coming in to match those expenses. So we made those reductions. That, in large part, had we had more revenue, would have fixed some of the structural deficits that we had, but we didn't. So we made prudent decisions in reducing our budget substantially, and those substantial reductions had impacts on our residents and businesses, but didn't impact the critical services that we provide: our police, our fire, our support of our schools, and our public works project. All strained, all working a lot harder, a lot of retirements from the police department in the past year, and fire department, and those were over our negotiations that we made structural changes to our negotiating MOUs with the police department. That was painful and caused a ripple effect in the department. However, having said that, we also have been, I believe, one of the most prudent councils in terms of funding money now through our ARP and OPEB future liabilities by paying those liabilities down now. If we didn't do that, and we had kicked the can down the road on those future liabilities for the city, which is easy to do, because at the end of the day, we as a council wouldn't be paying it now. There'd be additional monies in the reserve or in our accounts to do other things today. We didn't do that. We were prudent and fiscal, and we did that for the future of the city, not for the impacts that it has today. So I think we've done a very good job over the last several years, and that's because of the hard work of all of the staff here. I also want to say that cutting another $890,000 out of this budget was important. Some of it, yes, has to be negotiated. Some of it is not a cut in a police officer. I want to be clear for the public. We're not cutting a police officer position. We are just not filling that position for 2 years. There's a difference. The chief would not allow the service to this community to be impacted, and he would be up at the podium right now telling us differently if he thought that he wasn't able to do this and maintain the safety and the less than 3-minute response time for a police department. And I have great confidence and trust in his ability to make sure that this community remains the safest community in America. So I actually think that those things are all good decisions that we've made. In addition to that, I can't tell, the city manager, Dave Gustafson, or anyone else how to manage a specific position. That's very challenging to do. It's very challenging in a large organization to start telling people, you need to get rid of this position or not hire this position. You have a job, city manager, and that job is to run the city. You need to guide us, and we need to support you with finances where we can, and where we have to ask you to reduce, I believe it's your responsibility to provide the services to the community, the residents, the businesses of this community with the dollars that you have, and I trust that you will do it in the most prudent way. And the water, one can argue about the water billing manager or the parking manager, whether or not we need it or not, but I actually look at that as being a customer service benefit to our residents. I understand where you're coming from on those questions or those issues, and I do get that, but in the end, you've made reductions elsewhere because I believe you believe that's an important position for this community and for our residents and our enterprise that is already taxed and stressed, and we need to move forward in a structural way to fix the parking enterprise, and that may require, at least from what I'm hearing from you in the past, and Chad, you need that position in order to better manage the parking facilities and operations, which will then allow us to start to structurally manage this as opposed to being reactive in that fund and that operations, to starting to be proactive because you have the support. So I support that. And to say 900,000 is too little, I don't disagree in concept with that. The question is, how do you get there in 1 year or 2 years? If we didn't do some of the things with the ARP and OPEB this year, we'd have some additional monies that we would be able to make some additional reductions in, but we couldn't do that. Okay. It's a balance. I think it takes years to get there. I commend you on the work that you did. I commend every one of you out in the audience here tonight for the work that you've done over the last year and the last many years. This has not been easy, year after year, facing challenges of increasing expenses. And I believe you're on the right road to starting to bend the curve in terms of expenses and hopefully getting us in a better position in the future. The same way we are planning for the future by funding our liabilities now and reducing those future liabilities to protect the long-term assets of this city. So I commend you on that. I support the budget. I support the CIP budget. And with that, I will now entertain a motion.
So I move that the resolution.
Before you do, I think there's not the budget, there's the appropriation limit resolution.
I was going to start.
You want to do that one? Okay.
Yeah, that's. I'm
You're starting with
about
that one?
the first one.
Okay,
yes.
because you were talking about the budget.
Doing them separately.
I move the resolution entitled Resolution of the Council of the City of Beverly Hills adopting the annual appropriations limit for the fiscal year 2012-2013 be adopted.
I second that.
Roll call.
Councilmember Gold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bossy?
Yes.
Councilmember Brucker?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mirisch?
Yes.
Mayor Bryant?
Yes. I'll now entertain a motion on the resolution, on the next resolution.
I move that the resolution entitled Resolution of the Council of the City of Beverly Hills approving the operating budget and financial policies for the 2012-2013 fiscal year and appropriating funds therefore be adopted.
I'll second that.
Roll call.
Councilmember Gold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bossy?
No.
Councilmember Brucker?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mirisch?
No.
Mayor Bryant?
Yes. You're on a roll.
I'm on a roll. I move that the resolution entitled Resolution of the Council of the City of Beverly Hills approving the capital improvement program budget for the 2012-2013 fiscal year and appropriating funds therefore be adopted.
With the amendment to add $200,000 to the from the IT fund to fund the
upgrades
of
audiovisual.
the audiovisual improvements for 288.
Right.
I'll second that with those amendments.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bossy?
No.
Councilmember Brucker?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mirisch?
No.
Mayor Bryant?
Yes. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item E1.
One item, I'm sorry, just real quickly. I would ask that tomorrow morning that we all get the changes that were made to the budget, because we just saw it for the first time tonight, so I would like to get a graph of that as soon as possible.
The detail that Don
Yes.
presented tonight.
Yes.
Certainly.
Thank you. What? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, we'll move on to item E1, City Clerk.
This is the time and place set for a public hearing to consider a resolution entitled, "A Resolution of the Board of the Parking Authority of the City of Beverly Hills approving the operating budget and financial policies for the 2012-2013 fiscal year and appropriating funds therefore." Let the record show that the notice of this hearing was published as required by law. The records and files of the Administrative Services Department and the report of the Director of Administrative Services, Chief Financial Officer concerning this matter shall be entered into the record.
Thank you. May we have an oral report from the Business Manager, Don Harrison?
Honorable Chairman and members of the board, what you have before you is the operating budget for the Parking Authority for fiscal year 2012-13. We have heard you that you want to streamline budgets, and so we presented a very streamlined budget for the parking authority. The resolution is ready for adoption. The appropriations are in the amount of $34,466,200. It includes a $5 million transfer from the city to the parking authority.
Okay. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to be heard on this matter? Hearing none, are there any questions from the directors of the parking authority? Dr. Gold? Ms. Bossi?
Yes, thank you. In the report, there's a discussion about non-cash expenditures, depreciation of $6,399,200. Can you explain to me what that means?
Yes, depreciation is an acknowledgement that you're using a portion of the assets that you have every year. And so it's an accounting function. We need to budget for it because we need to show that charge. But it's not, there's no cash changing place. It's basically a balance sheet transaction, moving money from assets to cash, moving assets from fixed assets to cash, basically.
So when you're talking about depreciation, are you talking about for, like, if the garage starts to deteriorate, maintenance? Is that what you mean? How does it?
What it is, it's an accounting tool, and it takes the original cost of the facility and spreads it over a number of years. And each year, you take that charge, acknowledging that you're using up that much of the facility at that point.
Okay. Thank you.
Nothing, thank you. With that, the hearing is closed, and I will now entertain a motion.
Okay, I move the resolution entitled Resolution of the Board of the Parking Authority of the City of Beverly Hills approving the operating budget and financial policies for the 2012/2013 fiscal year and appropriating funds therefore be adopted.
I second that.
Thank you. Roll call.
Director Gold?
Yes.
Director Bossi?
Yes.
Director Brucker?
Yes.
Director Mirisch?
Yes.
Chair Bryant?
Yes. Okay. With that, we will move on to the Parking Authority consent calendar. Anyone wishing to pull anything off the Parking Authority consent calendar? That's item G. Okay. With that, I will entertain a motion for that.
I move the adoption of the consent agenda as follows. 1, consideration of the minutes of the Parking Authority meeting of May 15, 2012. Approval to authorize the General Counsel, Chief Financial Officer, and Treasurer to execute an agreement with Wells Fargo Bank to provide the Beverly Hills Parking Authority Bank depository services.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Roll call.
Director Gold?
Yes.
Director Bossi?
Yes.
Director Brucker?
Yes.
Director Mirisch?
Yes.
Chair Bryant?
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to the consent calendar H. Any items that wish to be pulled off? I'm moving item 9.
Item 9, did you not want to pull off item 7?
Sure.
No, that was,
I know.
yeah.
And,
Item 10,
okay,
item 12,
okay.
and item 16. For me.
Any other items?
Nope.
What?
Larry?
No, I don't have any.
I didn't want
Larry
to.
wants to pull something off.
I do not want to pull something off, but I do have an amendment to item 13, which was the agreement with the law offices of Schutt, Mahaley, and Weinberger, and Finance Department asked us to include an appropriation which would contemplate both monies expended this fiscal year and next fiscal year so that we weren't coming back in a couple of weeks getting the appropriation for the next fiscal year. So I have a revised recommendation that would include an appropriation of funds and a purchase order that would, these amounts anticipate not just expenditures in the current fiscal year, but also expenditures in the coming 12-13 fiscal year.
But this doesn't require us to take it out, correct?
It does not require us to take it out, but I would request that the
Amended.
motion include the amended language here, which would be including the appropriation and the purchase order.
So with that, why don't we take items 1 through 6, 8. Ms. Bossi?
Sure. I move the adoption of the consent agenda as follows. 1, consideration by the City Council of the minutes of special meeting of April 17th, 2012. 2, consideration of the City Council of the minutes of the regular meeting of May 15, 2012. 3, review of budgeted demands paid, report dated May 5th through May 18, 2012. 4, review of budgeted demands paid, report dated May 19th, June 1st, 2012. 5, payroll disbursement report dated June 7th, 2012. 6, portfolio report, quarter ending December 31st, 2011. 8, amending certain development standards for single-family properties in the central area of the city and amending the Beverly Hills Municipal Code, second reading for adoption. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Brucker. If you'll do number 11, 13, 14, 15, and 17.
Move for the adoption and approval of number 11, authorize the city attorney, director, administrative services, CFO, and the treasurer to execute an agreement with Wells Fargo Bank to provide the city of Beverly Hills Bank Depository Services. Number 13, agreement with the law firm of Schutte, Mahaley and Weinberger, LLP, for special counsel services relating to the Metropolitan Transit Authority's West Side Subway extension with the following amendments
To include the appropriation of funds and the purchase order as provided in the document that was just distributed to the City Council.
So noted. Number 14, amendment number 1 to the agreement with Gruen and Associates for consulting design services related to improvements to City Gateway at Doheny Drive and Santa Monica Boulevard. Approval of a change purchase order in the amount of $121,509 to Gruen and Associates for these services. Number 15, amendment number 1 to the agreement with Gilchrist and Rudder, a professional corporation, for special counsel services. And number 17, rejection of a bid for contract work pertaining to the 221 North Crescent brick facade replacement project.
I second that.
Actually,
I started it.
You started, so you can second
it.
You'll second
and
it.
I'll second it.
I'll begin it. You can second it.
Yes.
Roll call.
Councilmember Gold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bossi?
Yes.
Councilmember Brucker?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mirisch?
Yes.
Mayor Bryan?
Yes. Okay, item 7, deleting the requirement to accept dedicated property within 1 year and amending the Beverly Hills Municipal Code, second reading for adoption. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Gold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bossi?
Yes.
Councilmember Brucker?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mirisch?
Yes.
Mayor Bryan?
No. Okay, item number 9, to increase water rates in fiscal years 2012, 2013, and 2013 and 14, second reading for adoption. Unless there are comments, I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bossi?
Yes.
Councilmember Brucker?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mirisch?
No.
Mayor Bryan?
Yes. We'll go to item number 10, an agreement with J.K. Micklin, DBA Yamada Enterprises for furniture purchase and installation at Beverly Hills Public Library in the amount of $229,983.82, and approval of a purchase order in the amount of $225,983.82 to J.K. Micklin, DBA Yamada Enterprises for the work.
So moved.
Is there any comment?
Yeah, questions. If I understand correctly, this is for the, as a result of the construction, it's a direct result of the new.
Children's.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that is the case.
Okay, thanks. So since I oppose that, well, not, since I oppose the spending the money on that, that's why I pulled this, because I felt.
Right.
Okay. Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bossi?
Yes.
Councilmember Brucker?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mirisch?
No.
Mayor Bryan?
Yes. Okay, moving right along, we'll go to item number 12, authorizing the city manager or his designee to negotiate and execute an addendum with the AT&T Corporation to state agreement, CalNet 2, Amendment 8, MSA 2, number 50658-21 for the replacement of existing 911 equipment. Comments?
Well, I just wanted to understand it a little better.
Okay. So, somebody going to?
Yeah, right here.
Hi, I'm Donna Norris with the Beverly Hills Police Department. Good evening. You want to know more about the requesting?
Well, no. Why would we designate the city manager? Why wouldn't we designate the chief, for example?
That I can't answer.
The typical approach that we use is because of the dollar amount, it's my signature authority, and
How much?
I work with the department to negotiate the agreement.
The issues that are being negotiated aren't the technical scope of work for the equipment. They're really the insurance and indemnification issues, as well as the permission to come on site and do the work. So please correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, that's correct.
But the upgrades to the 911 system have been negotiated on a regional level and are being paid for at the state level.
So
but the AT&T and the state have asked that each agency for whom the work is being done, and this will be an interoperable, interconnected system, each agency must approve AT&T coming on board doing the work, and each agency can then put its own requirements for coming on site into the addendum. We have done that. We have sent it off to AT&T. AT&T has not yet gotten back to us if they've got some tinkering with the agreement, and those are the issues. And so I think from my viewpoint, those are more administration issues than police department issues.
So the negotiation isn't for financial terms. The negotiation is for conditions as to when they can come and or let me phrase it as an open question. What do those negotiations then encompass?
Basically insurance and indemnification, and essentially they've asked us to approve the scope of work, but the scope of work really isn't within our control. I think it's really just assenting to the fact that they are going to come in and alter our 911 system and our acknowledgement that they are going to do that.
So what kind of upgrades can we expect for the 911 system?
That I'll turn back to.
This is it's a regional system. It's going IP based, which means we will be essentially be able to go to any other agency in the event of a disaster and plug in and get all of our phone lines, all of our emergency lines. We'll be able to get what's called Alley Annie, which is their location and their phone number. Right now, we can't get that. And it will also pave the way for next generation 911, which means the public safety answering point will be able to get text messages or video, that sort of thing. So it's paving the way. The state's moving towards this direction, and it's paving the way for us to be able to do that.
So again, I guess I don't really understand why in this case we would need to authorize the city manager to negotiate. It sounds like it's a purely administrative matter anyway.
So the only right now you have not delegated the authority to enter into this type of agreement to staff. So the other option to you delegating it to staff tonight would be for us to wait until the next council meeting, and when we have AT&T's comments, incorporate that, negotiate that, and then come back to the council for approval of the agreement.
Look, I'm fine. I would just ask if there's any funny stuff, Jeff, that you please let us know.
Absolutely. That's always our practice. If there's something that's outside the normal parameters on insurance or liability or something that would need review and approval by the council, we bring those agreements back to you for review.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So is there a motion as so moved? Read?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Councilmember Gold?
Yep.
Councilmember Bossy?
Yes.
Councilmember Brucker?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mirisch?
Yes.
Mayor Bryant?
Yes. Next, item 16, amendment number 5 to the employment agreement with Jeff Colin. That's been pulled. Any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none.
Well, I have a comment.
Okay.
I was actually going to pull it too. I can't support it, primarily because we've asked our public safety employees also to not have a cost of living increase, so it's hard for me to justify doing that. So I can't support it.
And I'll add for similar reasons, but also, interesting that we're saying that 2% is a CPI, and that's the reason that it was set at 2%. And yet again, I go back to something I just voted against. We're increasing this year almost by 350% compared to that, the water rates, and that over 2 years, 14% in 2 years. Just seems to me very inconsistent, and also, as said, for the reasons that Lily said. So, can't support it.
Okay. Well, I can, because I think the city manager has done a fine job this year. Cost of living adjustment was low on our possible options and discretion the council used. I think we were fiscal in coming up with this, and I accept the comments by my colleagues. And with that, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Gold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bossy?
No.
Councilmember Brucker?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mirisch?
Nope.
Mayor Bryan?
Yes. Okay, the commission synopsises are before you. Other business, I just recommend that you all read the Courier in the morning, the editorial. It'll give you a great insight about the budget decisions that were made prior to the close of the public hearing tonight. Thank you all.